What do you think makes a great salesperson? For me, there are two ways to look at this question. There's what makes a great salesperson that they naturally are, and then there's what makes a great salesperson after they've been taught something. Natural ability for me would have to be things like curiosity, drive, student mentality, that desire to learn, to try things, to be the best they possibly can, someone who's not afraid to make mistakes. You can't teach that kind of stuff. You just naturally have that as a person, or you don't. Something that can be taught, one of my favourite things is questioning. The art of questioning, the art of discovery, trying to find out as much about the prospect as you can, but really focusing in on the right questions and asking them in the right place, the right time, in an effective way. A salesperson wants to be a great listener, which only really comes about once you've asked the right questions. There was a great quote I heard a few years ago, which was, a salesperson's credibility comes from the questions they ask, not the answers they give, which I think really nicely sums up the whole idea of a salesperson's, especially like someone working the early part of a sales process, doesn't really need to know product knowledge. Product knowledge doesn't really matter at the very early stage because it's all about questioning, understanding what questions to ask. Definitely need to know the problems your product solves and the typical reasons why someone might buy your product, but having expert technical knowledge and knowing the ins and outs of everything that your product is and does isn't really needed. And those that are naturally very good at sales are those that maintain that kind of mentality throughout the whole of their career. And that mentality is, I don't know the answer to that, but hey, Mr. Prospect, why don't you explain that a little bit more to me? What do you mean by that? Oh, that sounds really frustrating. Can you just explain that to me a bit more? Sorry, I'm not quite understanding that. That kind of inquisitive nature and those genuine questions to try and understand something naturally comes from someone who doesn't know the answers, i.e. a beginner. And the best salespeople are those that kind of maintain that throughout the whole of their career. They're not foregoing an answer to something, they're going back with an inquisitive question or an inquisitive nature. What's something you think every sales team needs to function? For me, the answer to this is simple. It's a process. An A to Z, very clear, step-by-step sales structure so that everyone on the team, whether it's one person or 50 people, they all know what playbook to follow. They all know, okay, first step is to have this conversation where I need to find out these three things. Once I've done that, the next step is for me to book in a survey, for example. Before that survey, I send this email, I then have this conversation with them, I send them 2 reminders. On the survey, I go through and I do this, and then it's time for me to put together my proposal. I've got these email templates that are ready to go to chase up the proposal, and then when that proposal has been accepted, I send them this email, I give them this call, and then I pass these notes over to the next team. That's what I mean by a process. I think loads and loads of companies just sort of say, sell this, and you're sort of left to your own devices quite a lot to try and come up with your own process that ultimately is different to the person next to you, and then leadership wonder why that there are different results coming from different people, and ultimately it's because there's lots of different processes happening. So come up with a winning process, come up with a structure, whether that means spending money on a CRM or a software or just having a really clear process in place is the most important thing for me. What are 3 quick tips you'd give to businesses who are building their very first sales team? My first tip would be write down the top 10 problems your product or products solve. Think about the reasons why people come to you and why they buy from you. What emotional problems do people come to you with that they're trying to fix? Ultimately, you're left in a scenario where you're not selling on the features you give them or the benefits of the product, but you're selling them on the problems that you fix. That's a lot more powerful than selling on feature. The second thing would be to outline a process. As I said, having a process is very, very important. Make sure there is a very structured A to Z step-by-step process. It's documented, it's in a folder on Google Drive or whatever, but it's something that's repeatable. So every salesperson that joins your team, you can go through onboarding with them and you can say, great, here is our process, here is our guide on how we do sales here at your business. This is what you're going to be doing. Like I said earlier, if that involves a CRM, a dedicated system, or simply a step-by-step document with a process in it, that's a really important thing. The third thing would be focus on your people. Make sure that when you're interviewing, you have a really clear idea of the top traits of that individual you're looking for. make sure you have a good idea in terms of how you're testing for those traits during the interview process, whether it's a set of questions you're asking or it's certain scenarios or role plays or practice scenarios that you come up with that ultimately end up testing them. Getting the right people on the team is really important, and you want to make sure that you're not trying to change someone's natural state into something that you want. You want to try and find someone with the right mindset from day one. Mindset is something very difficult to change. Skill set is something that can be taught. So find people with the right mindset, and then as long as you've got the right skills to take them forward, that's the most important thing. So think about the problems, process, and people. 3 Ps. My final resource would speak to your customers, try and understand a little bit more about the problems they're looking to solve. Try and write those things down, as I mentioned earlier, and just work on your own process. Lots of people speak about what they think is the best way to sell, but ultimately if you're the owner of a business or you've started building your own sales team, the best thing you can do is pick up the phone, speak to prospects, speak to customers, and just try and work out what worked for them.